Justin Fields says he just wanted to say F it and get out there and play football and not have a cluttered mind, and I didn't see much of a difference.
No, I don't think yeah, it was one of those games that I think we all went into it hoping that, hey, it would be some big change, right? And the reality is that they're playing the Kansas City Chiefs on the road, and that's a really good ball club. It's not quite what the Bears are right now. And yeah, I mean, I think you saw it on the first play, right? Where he's backed up, he scrambles out, he gets it to his sideline, and they start moving the chains. And then from there on out, it just felt like every time he hit his back foot, the moral of the film for me was he didn't do great in the very limited true progression concepts we gave him. But the bigger story to me was it was like he hit his back foot and it was like there was 3 guys in his face. And then you also look downfield simultaneously at the same time. And
nobody's open.
Nobody's open. So it's like it's getting to this point where it feels like Justin is going to be the perfect scapegoat, but there's so much more dysfunction than Fields. But when you're a quarterback in the National Football League and you're drafted high, it just like that tends to be the thing, right? Is, oh, well, you should be able to fix everything. And at the same time, I'm like, I don't know who on earth as a quarterback could fix what's going on right now with what seems to be the Bears' issues.
So, Tim, I was talking to a couple of NFL guys over the last couple of days who specifically asked me to look at some stuff. They like, hey, look at these third down plays that the Bears have. And their conclusion, both guys, in different organizations, different paths in the NFL, their conclusion was that the Bears' offense is very simple. And I got what their definition of simple was. One, I'd be curious if you agree with the statement. And 2, what does that mean that the offense is very simple? Because one of the guys was like, look, Lawrence, they're running the routes for the Bears receivers. Those guys are not open because the defense knows exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, they reload a lot of concepts. So I think there's a lot to unpack there. They reload a lot of concepts compared to other NFL teams. Like when you watch the Broncos, you watch the Dolphins, or you watch the Commanders or some of these other guys, you don't see them reload the same concept, meaning, hey, you know, you might have a shot play in that week, right? Samurai or XZ Read, some of those plays that we've talked about a ton on this program. You might see a team throw it twice. The Bears, we saw them throw that little, I hated the concept, but I could see how potentially it could work. But it was like an ultra high, which we talked about last week, which is that lean in and then aim for the back pylon corner on one side and then a big in route on the other. I think they ran it 4 times. It's not a super creative play either. So it's like they're reloading that 4 times, right? So that's the one form of simplicity, right? Is they're reloading a lot of the same concepts. My bigger thing that I'm kind of like, I'm trying to get into the building, right? You're trying to mentally put yourself in the building. We do a lot of boot where it's like, hey, we're going to get him on the edge, or a lot of just QB movement. And those are very simple 1, 2, 3 concepts. We do a lot of shot plays, right? Where we ride the fake and it's like, hey, 1 to 2. We don't do a ton of drop back progressions. And that to me is like an indication of maybe, hey, we don't trust the quarterback to do it. With that being said, it's like, dang, man, you know, I want to be in Justin's corner and say, hey, we got to put more on the quarterback. Because to me, it's always, let's put more on the quarterback. Let's find out who these quarterbacks are. Let's give them a shot to be successful. Simultaneously, one of the only times we saw them really give him a concept where it's like, hey, you got to sit underneath, you got the ram in route behind it, read it 1 to 2. He passed the sit, and then that's the ball that, of course, then gets tipped and picked, right? So it's like, I don't know if simple's the word, or if it's just like they're not really at the point where they're going to put a lot on him from a processing standpoint. And I don't really know if that's fair, because I feel like when you watched last year, I don't feel like that was the issue, right? I feel like it was like, hey, creating separation or explosive plays was more the issue. I didn't feel like it was like, man, Justin doesn't understand what's going on out there. And then now I feel like it's like we've almost taken a huge step back with what should, I mean, the NFL is 90% the same concepts, right? So it should be not that big of a deal to go system to system for a majority of the system. But that's where it's kind of, it's weird when you peel back this tape, because it is so simple, but it's not like, hey, you know, my first grade flag team is running these concepts, right? Like, it's not like that simple. It's just simple from the standpoint of we're not really putting a ton of, half field reads in where read this against this coverage, this against this coverage. And then we're recycling so many concepts. It's just kind of, I hate like boiling it down as such a simple thing, but it's just like something is off. And it feels like, obviously if you're in building, you would know exactly what it is, but it feels like there's some mistrust there on both sides.
Bingo.
That now is starting to kind of rear its ugly head in a really bad way.
That was my next question, Tim. The story that the play calling tells, the story that the game planning tells, isn't one of trust. Despite all they say about it, they always talk about trust your teammates. Everyone does their 111th complimentary football. I don't know how you can build the confidence of a young passer when he's absolutely smart enough to know what he's being trusted to do and not do. And there's so much subtext there, and it's almost passive aggressive. And it's hard to understand, to reconcile what they say with how they coach.
I mean, I think you're dead on. I would have laughed a lot harder at the passive aggressive if it wasn't for these dang AirPods. I don't know what it is about these things, but they do not fit in my ear. But I mean, like, listen,
I wasn't even making a joke. I was serious.
Yeah, I mean, I know, but I just, I love you guys. So I'm sitting, I mean, you're dead on. I just think the reality is it's like every NFL quarterback, you're dead on from the standpoint of they're not dumb. Justin's not sitting there like, man, I'm running the same stuff that Patrick is, right? Like, and again, not that he should, right? I'm not saying that, hey, he's ready for the kind of freedom at the line of scrimmage that Patrick has or Kirk Cousins or some of these guys. I don't think he is. But I just like, I don't feel like Justin Fields' issue is like understanding coverages from the standpoint of like, hey, I'm going to work this side against 2 shell, this side against 3 shell. Like, he did that at Ohio State. I feel like he did that his rookie year. I feel like his issue is, I feel like we have a lot of 8% things, right? Like we talk about it in our company a lot where it's like, man, this impacts a passer 8% or 3%, which like, it's not that big of a deal in a vacuum, but when you start stacking them on top of each other, like, 8% of it is, the play callers, right? Doesn't trust the quarterback. Another 8% of it is that we changed his footwork. Another 8% of it is that our O-line and then you all of a sudden are like, oh, well, there's half of it, right? There's 50% of it because it's all these little things compounding. And then, I mean, it's just like, you don't have to be a genius either to like read between the lines of what he said last week at his press conference. And then you also don't have to be a genius to realize like, his agent got in his ear and he walked it back, right? Like, I mean, like, everyone's human. At some point, Justin was like, you know what? I'm tired of hearing about how it's my fault. Let's talk a little bit about everything they're telling me to try to figure out while I'm dropping back, right? Like that, what Justin's playing like is the notorious offensive coordinator who tells you like, hey, we got pistol H drag. Hey, we love the basic against quarters, but alert that post against cover 2. And then, hey, make sure we're aware of the comeback against 3. And then, oh, by the way, if they give you 2 robber, just get to your drag. But this team's notorious for giving you cover 33 heat if it's 3rd and 6. And then that's when I want you to get to the Y on the shot, right? Like, it's just like too much. Whereas most of these guys that are playing efficient, they know the down and distance. They know situationally what coverage they're going to get. And then they're going to really kind of speed up their progression. So to me, it's like, I think there's a lot of compounding things here. I think the lack of trust is definitely apparent from a play calling standpoint. Like, if you didn't believe in your quarterback, what would you do? You give them a lot of simple things between shot plays and boot plays where you feel like it's 1, 2 to 3, no matter what, you can't mess it up. And to me, I just think there's even within the context of not thinking he can do certain things, there's a better way to build it. Like, you don't have to build it through boot. You could build it through just a full field progression where, hey, you have Chase Claypool on the big stick at 8 post. You have Darnell Mooney on the flutie, the sail concept. You got backside DJ Moore on the in route. You read it 1 to 2 to 3. It's a really simple play, but it gets you to where you're going to attack every coverage and every level of the field without giving him a full blown, 2 shell, 3 shell beater. There's ways to do it and still give yourself a chance for success. And that's where I feel like the real disconnect is. It's almost like we're doing these 1 to 2 to 3 type plays, these pure progressions, but we're also narrowing the field, or which I don't know. Maybe that's an indictment of what they actually think about him.
Exactly.
Right? Like maybe that's the indictment.
I can't figure out it's chicken or the egg. I can't figure out like what they've already determined. Man, I can't do it. Either we can't block this, or he can't throw this, or I don't want to find out. It's a really uncomfortable position to be in when you're trying to figure out why things are happening.
The downside is that we also, if it continues to go on, we won't know if this coaching staff is dog or if Justin's a bad quarterback, right? Like that's the reality. Is
it's not zero sum.
Sit there.
It can be both.
We're gonna have to sit there and say like, hey, at the end of the day, it seems like everyone has to go. And the reality is you don't know, right? One could be good. It's just neither of them are giving a true evaluation. The bummer for me is like Fields can't control this, right? So Justin can't sit there and redo the install, right? He can't like have a secret meeting with DJ Moore and all the linemen and redo the install. It's like, if we're actually going to get a look at this Bears team, it has to come from the coaches, right? It has to be OC head coach putting a great game plan in and then Justin squandering it, because then at least okay, it's definitely the quarterback, because look at all these guys open. But here's the thing, turn on the tape. You're not sitting there going, look at all these guys open, right? So right now, to me, it's like the coaching staff, I don't think are doing themselves any favors either, because the reality is by putting in a great game plan, people are smart enough to watch the tape and know, okay, Justin's not executing, these coaches are good. The other thing, though, is let's say you put in a great game plan and Justin starts to play a little bit better, but let's say internally you think this isn't the guy. Him playing better because you have a better game plan in, guess what? Now you can deal him, right? And you can go a different direction if that's really what you want to do. For me, it's hard on me because I think I saw so much promise in his tape last year. And then there's still bits and pieces that you can pull from and go like, man, when he plays on time and he throws this ball to DJ Moore, or he does this, it's like, man, you can see the glimpses. So it's just hard to sit there and say, man, let's give up on that kid. When in reality, I just feel like, man, I'm hard pressed to think that he's really gotten a great shake. I get what Bears fans are going through though, right? They've been through really for a long time of not having a quarterback. It's not, I feel like Justin's getting a lot of maybe not what he's put on tape, right? But like what has been the history of the last few years. And then it's like, hey, they're ready to jump ship. It's a challenge though, man, in the NFL, because you sit there and you go, how many Bills fans were ready to run Josh Allen out of town, right? And then all of a sudden it was that year that it flipped. And I just think that's the challenge as an NFL coach and executive is, hey, when to pull the plug, when to not pull the plug. But I get why Bears fans are frustrated. It's just hard on me to sit there and go, I feel like he just, hasn't gotten it done, when the reality is I'm like, what is there to get done when you hit your back foot, someone's in your lap, and all three of your receivers are covered? I don't know what there is to do.
It's interesting, Tim, because something you said kind of sparked something that's going to allow for me to give Luke Getsy a little bit of grace even inside of this criticism. It's how do coaches learn to be better coaches? And here's why I ask it. I when I'm not here, I teach. And I know that this would be year 13. I'm a better teacher now than I was in year 1. And you learn from the trial and error. You learn from mistakes that you make in doing it. The students change. They challenge you in different ways. And now I'm sitting here really thinking about Luke Getsy going, you had a pupil who knew all the answers to the test. And that probably made you think you're a great teacher, even though the pupil already knew the answers to the test before you put it on his desk. And now you go to another student.
And did we know that literally? Didn't they actually?
Yes.
They literally gave him answers to stuff?
Yes.
Maggie did?
And now you go to a student who needs more. And you're like, well, no, he doesn't need, I don't have to give him more, because look at this thing that I was doing before and it worked swimmingly. Look at what this student of mine has been, even though he was a multiple time MVP. before you walked in the door. I wonder, when you're dealing with people who want to come and help out at Elite, how do you monitor if they're getting better at coaching? And I'm really serious about this. And I love this type of stuff, because I do wonder if Luke Getsy is going, I know exactly what I'm doing. And he looks at his own resume and goes, of course I know what I'm doing. And then I don't know if he's looked at it honestly and said, maybe I don't know what I was doing, and I don't know how to reach other people who aren't the greatest regular season quarterback of all time.
I mean, I almost feel like a perfect person to like address this, because our coaches go through it, right? We hire coaches from college football. They recruit the kid to coach, and then they come and they work for us, and parents sign up, right? And there's some kids that they're not as gifted as other kids. So you have to sit there and you have to go, man, I've never had to teach it this way, and let me learn how to teach it this way. So yeah, coaches go through it all the time. I think of trying to become a better coach because of different learning styles, except, I mean, the root of, I think, everyone's downfall is when all of a sudden you think you got it figured out. Because when you think you have it figured out, that's when everything changes, right? Like, I think we all go through that. I think the thing with Getsy too is, like, you sit there and you look at it, and it's like, it's, to me, it's much deeper than even just knowing where to go with the football, as, you know, technique, right? Like, you talk through the footwork and everything. You know, Luke had no experience with this right foot back stuff that we've been talking about a lot for the last few weeks. He had no experience with that until 2 years ago with Aaron Rodgers, and he wasn't driving that. Aaron Rodgers was driving it, and Luke was trying to say, like, okay, what did he take to that hitch route? What made that successful? What didn't make that successful? How's that timing different than if I had my left foot back in the gun? So it's like, not only are you not teaching the student, you're trying to learn so that you can regurgitate it to the number 2 and number 3 quarterbacks in the building. But simultaneously, you're not even it's not your thing. You're trying to absorb someone else. It's like the same way, you know, Shanahan is successful, McVay's successful, but like there's guys from their tree that aren't, right? Because they're trying to be them, or they're trying to do what their system was, which to me is a whole different challenge in the NFL of now, like, boil it down to what the Bears are going through. You're trying to implement something that's not really yours with someone who needs help from a technical standpoint if you're going to change it, right? Like, if you weren't going to change his footwork, he doesn't need any help because he's been doing it his whole life. He knows what to take. But because you're changing it, he needs technical help, and you're not necessarily like a technician in this aspect. Like, that's where I think it's almost so much deeper with this staff. And then, like, I mean, I guess it's not shocking to me then when all of a sudden it's like, man, you know, you feel like his footwork's sloppy. And then it's like, if your footwork's sloppy, how could I trust you with this progression or this progression? And that's where I think, like we were talking about earlier, that trust factor, like, boils up even more. It's hard, right? Because we've all struggled at times with our job. So it's always hard too, because then we're like, man, you know, these guys are human beings, and you wish, you know, you don't want someone to call for your job the second you start to struggle, right? But the reality is it's just like, Bears fans and the NFL deserve better. And that's just what it's going to end up being, where it's like, they're going to end up having a clean house. Like, I don't know how either Fields or him survives if what they've put on tape to week 3 stays what they put on tape. I think there's a world in which they do silence the outside noise, put in some real high quality game plans, and let Justin either sink or swim. And it paves the way for us really finding an evaluation out. If they keep rolling out what they rolled out against the Chiefs, I don't know how anybody survives, because it does look so bad. I mean, I'm not the only guy saying it. I mean, Orlovsky and all these different guys, it's like, it is awful, right? Like, you sit there and you talk with anyone who watches more than just the Bears tape, and it's just like, they're not playing the same game as the Dolphins.
Nothing
I mean, like,
works.
they're playing the Broncos this week, who are also 0-3. And I'm telling you, offensively, they're playing different games. And the Broncos just got beat 70-20, right? Like, I'm not sitting here acting like they're a great football team. But it's like, even them, you turn on the tape and it was like there was hope. Like, you turn on the Bear stuff and you're just like, oh my gosh. Like, it wasn't until the fourth quarter that you felt like, oh, we're moving the ball. And then you look down and it's like, it's me out there at corner covering DJ Moore, you know? So, I mean, I don't know.